Welcome to episode 1 of the Mctcon podcast. Our guest today was a driving force behind the original Mortal Kombat game released by Midway in 1992. He also played the original Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, and of course, Johnny Cage. You can meet him live and in person on November 17th at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention. Master Daniel Pesina, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me, and everyone, thanks for taking the time to tune in.
Absolutely. So before Mortal Kombat, you were already an accomplished martial artist. So let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to become a martial artist, and how old were you at the time?
In my family, there are 4 brothers. My mom and dad only had males. My poor mom. So there's a big age gap between my 2 older brothers and myself, and then there's another big age gap between my brother Carlos, who is Raiden, and I. So, being the youngest of brothers, you'd get all the small tasks, like changing the TV channel or getting them glasses of milk or a glass of water, just because back in those days the TVs didn't have remote or anything like that.
Right.
2, them being at least 8 years older than me, if we would play games, they would always win because they're older than me, because, they're physically and mentally above me. So one day I was watching Charlie Chan the Detective. It was a black and white TV series, and I saw him throw a guy. And I was like, what was that? And my dad was watching it with me, and my dad served in the U.S. military. And he's like, oh, I learned a little bit. That's judo. And so I was like, if I learned that, I could finally, when I wrestle with my brothers, I can beat them.
Wow.
So I began to bug my father to take me to judo lessons. And that took a long time for him to finally take me in for lessons. I was about 10 years old. There were no kids classes. There were teen classes, but there were kids classes. So my dad took me to like a local judo school, and the guy's like, oh, he's too young. I look 10 years old. I don't look 13 years old. And my dad saw that the guy was in the military, in the army. He saw some stuff on his wall, certificates on his wall. And he's like, hey, I was in the army. So they're talking. And finally, in the end, the guy was just like, you know what? I'll take your son, see how he does. If he can keep up, I'll keep him. But otherwise, there's no kids classes. He's going to have to wait till he's 13.
Okay.
And so, I really loved it. And I was lucky enough that there was one of my older brothers, Tony, the one who's above me, not the oldest brother, Ruben. Tony, one of his friends was like an assistant instructor there. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, aren't you Tony's brother? And I was like, yeah. And then he kind of took me under his wing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I just started with judo.
And so it sounds like the martial arts was just a family affair from day one, and you kind of got the rite of passage by getting to get in there as well.
Yeah. It was. And 2, it's a sport that you can, because it is judo, it's a sport you can do by yourself, but also you work out like a team. So, it's not like completely by yourself. You have teammates, doing judo. So
Right.
I loved it.
That's awesome. So some people may not know that you and the core group of martial artists from Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, you were actually very close friends before the game was ever created. So what impact did being real life friends have on the game? How did that translate?
We could work together right away. John Tobias and my brother Carlos used to sometimes draw. They were both artists. So they would practice drawing at like my mom's kitchen table. So I knew John way before he ever had the concept of creating a fighting game that was real, So, and 2, when we, as we started the game, because it was so low budget, John was like, who can we get to work for free or cheap? And so I was like, oh, I could get these guys to work. And John knew those guys too. We've all hung around together. And he's like, you can get them. And I was like, yeah, we can get them. And they're really good already. So, I think we can, I think it'll be a lot easier working together. And two, with that, a lot of the things that turned out in Mortal Kombat were just us because we were friends, a lot of goofing around and a lot of teasing each other.
Because there's something cohesive about the game, and I think little intangibles like that make the difference, And so, you guys use real martial artists as opposed to animated graphics. Why was that so important? And do you think that decision is one of the things that really set Mortal Kombat apart from the other fighters in the 90s?
Yeah, when John called me up to ask for help to create the game, he was like, John and I and all those guys, Hosung, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Kano, Raiden, we would all go to arcades together. We collected comic books. We would go to arcades together. We played Street Fighter. And when John was like, hey, I got an idea. And two, John was like, he was like, remember a long time ago when we wanted to film Kung Fu movies and I had my dad's camera and, back in the day. And I was like, yeah, he's like, I want to do a fighting game, but use real people and have real martial arts in it. And he's like, can you help me? And I was like, sure, let's, what do we have to do? And he's like, well, we got to put a package together, a proof of concept. He's like, you come up with I'll videotape you. You come up with fight sets and some martial arts stuff, and I'll come up with some characters, and I'll see if my company wants to make the game. And so we snuck into Midway because John was like, John was like, we were at that time. I was still competing, training. So I was like, I'll come before training because after training, I'm going to be too tired. And he's like, no, come at 10 o'clock at night when nobody's in the studio. I don't want anybody to steal my idea. And so myself, Carlos, and Rich kind of snuck into Midway Games at about 10 o'clock at night. And we filmed a bunch of stuff and we got to play free video games, which was awesome. And then we put this package together and John presented that to Midway. And
wow,
then
so this is like a covert mission getting this thing.
Yeah. They sent Ed Boon to meet with us. And originally Ed said no. He said he would not make any money, because he's more management. He's a programmer, yes, but he's more management, so, his interest is more, the corporation has to make their money back. Right. And we're not really known. We did stunts for Turtles, true, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but still, he just couldn't. It's hard to grasp how this would make any money.
Which of course now is crazy to say, but at the time you had no idea.
Yeah, we really had no idea. So then. They shot down our idea and they're saying, hey, we like your idea of a fighting game, so we're going to have one with Van Damme. So there's a rumor out there. I call it a rumor, even though the company says that Van Damme was originally going to be in Mortal Kombat. We never mentioned Van Damme in filming. We didn't ever mention Van Damme as a reference until the very, very end when we did a move just to do a parody of him. But that's totally not true. That's
a major rumor to clear up because that's one of the biggest ones going out. It's like, well, Van Damme didn't do it, so we made Johnny Cage just to spite him. And it's like, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah, John and Ed tell that story. It's because in my opinion, it's mainly because of IP, intellectual property. Because we were not working for the company, we presented the idea in a package. I concept created Sub-Zero and Scorpion. So, and that, all that stuff is worth a lot of money. Yeah. It's worth a lot of money. And
you have the wherewithal to know then that if this becomes something, that IP is very important. So that was very forward looking, because at the beginning, you don't know, you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, so, you really don't.
This is the MCT Con podcast. We're speaking with Master Daniel Pesina, and who you can meet on November 17th at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention. So that was my next question. Many people thinking Jean-Claude Van Damme was the inspiration, so we just cleared that up. So let's talk about some of the movies and even comic books that actually inspired some of the characters. The characters are now legendary. Like a lot of these were inspired by some comic books, correct?
Yeah, Johnny Cage, what later on became Johnny Cage originally was Iron Fist. And he just, people are like, oh, you dress like Van Damme. No, I dress like the times. In the times of that, everyone would wear bike shorts. You know,
Right.
the
The
sash,
90s. Yeah.
yeah, the sash on my waist was to make a different color, so that way when we film it, we can tell the top and bottom. So it's not really. We never thought of Van Damme. We were just doing it how we're doing it. And that character is yeah, is Iron Fist considered was supposed to be an Iron Fist knockoff. Same
So
thing with yeah, same Bruce Lee with Liu Kang for number one, but a lot of people don't know that Shang-Chi is MK2. Liu Kang is Shang-Chi. If you look at his uniform, it's the exact Shang-Chi uniform. Gauntlets, the red stripe with the black pants. We thought of Shang-Chi, you know. Jax we got from Luke Cage, you know. Uh Sonya was more of I know they say they were had somebody else in mind, but when we were creating Sonya, we didn't really have any woman per se in mind. You know, later on they're like, oh, it was this person or that person. I think they were like, I think they mentioned Kathy Long or something like that. But that was never mentioned when we were filming and creating the character. That's all stuff that was later on they decided to say things like that.
yeah, and it's interesting how people kind of draw their own conclusions, but it's like you go, no, that's not what we were thinking, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, yeah, too, and it doesn't help when they're you know the corporate people kind of be like, oh yeah, we yeah that. Well, that's you know if you ask the people who actually created it, like the right the concept, everybody it was a collaboration. Who came up with the concept? You know, who came up with you know when originally John wanted Japanese ninjas, and he was like, what do you think? And I was like, dude. Everybody, it's the 90s. Everybody is Japanese ninjas. I was like, we should do the Lin Kuei and we can add uh, mystery to the characters and they can use alchemy to shoot fireballs and all this stuff. And John was like, what? And then so I showed him the book and I took him to the store to buy the book. And he was like, this is what you want in the game? And I was like, yep, this is what I want in the game. He's like, okay, I'll put it in the game. So it's like just you know, there's different ideas, you know, and you know, it just a lot of goofing around. Like for Scorpion's fatality, John was like, blow flames. And so I pretended to blow flames. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And then John is like, don't be an asshole. Oops, sorry, I did say don't be an asshole, but I'm sorry if I swore. It'll get bleeped out or whatever. And I was like, and he's like, why can't you do it? I was like, because if I breathe fire, my whole head will be on fire because of the cloth will catch on fire. And and then he's like, he's like, effer, pull your mask off. And Rich was like, it would be cool if he pulls his mask off and he's a skeleton because Rich is deathly afraid of skeletons. He's afraid of flying and he's afraid of skeletons. From the Seven Voyages of Sinbad, when they spread the dragon's teeth in the ground and skeletons pop up out of the teeth and fight. He hates it. That scene scares him, scares the crap out of him. So then I was just like, and his head's on fire like Ghost Rider because it's kind of like that reminded me of Ghost Rider. And so John was like, okay, we'll do that.
wow. So this is great. And, you know, we're on the same wavelength here because leading into my next question, it's hard to imagine now, but you were not originally supposed to play the ninjas. So tell us why that change was made just before filming.
Yeah. So naturally, you know, we were thinking of, you know, we only had certain parts. And naturally, the core group, you know, myself, my brother, and Rich, were the ones who helped pitch the game to Midway. So we got to have our face and Rich somewhat of his face. And they were like, oh, we need to mask somebody. And I was like, let's just throw Tony in a mask. And so the night
Oh,
before,
Anthony Marquez, yeah.
Anthony Marquez, Kung Lao, the night before he was going to film, he dropped a 25-pound weight on his toe and broke his toe. The thing is that all the movements couldn't be done quickly because we were using John Tobias's father's high 8 camera. They wouldn't let us use the studio camera at Midway because this project was shit. This project was not going to be any good. Ed wouldn't let us use that camera because this game is going to be terrible. So we were using that camera, so we had to film everything real slow, slower at a slower speed and overcome obstacles doing that. When John and I started first filming, we used desk lamps for lighting. So it's not a studio. It was like we filmed it in a storage compartment, basically. It was just old desks and chairs without legs, and that's what we use. So to do that, you have to not have a broken toe. And Tony's toe was huge. So John was just like, he goes, you designed all the fight, so you should just jump in there and do it because we're already behind schedule. Because to give you an idea, it took Johnny Cage, which is the first character, didn't have a name, but the character Johnny Cage took about 3 months to film. The last character, Liu Kang, took 3 days to film. So there's a big difference between the first character, even the second character, Kano, took about 6 weeks. Carlos was the next character. That took about a month. And I
imagine as you go, you learn some tricks and you kind of gain some efficiencies.
Well, we were creating so many things. We wanted for the first one, we wanted tag teams, we wanted secret characters, we wanted X-rays, we wanted 3 fatalities each one. One of them, my first Johnny Cage fatality was a brutality.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all these ideas in the first game, that we wanted. So it was just, we would come back and be like, oh, we created something else. Let's try to do this now. And so everybody would have to come back and film because it was filming reactions to that. And reaction to a special move. Originally, I had a different reaction for every hit. So we filmed all that. We filmed the first game, I would say had over 1,000 hours of video. And, I have 7.5 hours of if you see original footage, that's all my footage. I released it on the internet. I know you see it out there.
Oh, it's made the rounds.
Yeah. Yeah. So I only did maybe a half an hour of that. So posted a half an hour. So I got 7 more hours,
that's
some moves that never made it, that never made the game. Ed would take note of all the ideas. So that way, if we ever had a chance, we can bring them out later on, and that's why, later on in all these games, MK9 or MK, all these new ideas. No, those are all ideas we came up with in the first game. He just was smart enough to write them down and use them later because he was the guy in charge of that.
Forward thinking, definitely. So while we're still on the characters, tell us about the character that you wanted to play, but lost to a family member. I heard a rumor you had your eye on another certain maybe Thunder God.
Yeah, I wanted to be Raiden. I really wanted to be Raiden. And John goofing around was like, and the Striker character, nobody wanted to be him. Because it's a cop, you're going to go up against a trained martial artist hand to hand. Cops only train like 6 months or something like that. There's no way that a guy training 6 months can match a guy, Liu Kang, who's been training since he was like 2.
Essentially Bruce Lee, right?
Yeah. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way that character could ever win like that. So nobody wanted to be that. And John was just like, "You're going to be Stryker." And I was like, "No, let me be Michael Grimm. Let me be the Iron Fist character." And then he was like, "No, you're going to be Stryker." But in the end, I got to be my second choice.
I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So at the time, no one could possibly have known that the franchise that Mortal Kombat will become. It spawned countless games, films, TV series. It's the only fighting game that people are still talking about more than 30 years after it was created. So back in the 90s, when did you and the other martial artists start to realize that the popularity of the game, it was starting to exceed expectations? When did you know, like, I think we got something?
Two different times. I remember when I was working with my brother, Carlos, on Raiden, and all of a sudden people would just start. I'd walk into the building because, I walk into the building. Hey, Danny. Oh, hi. I'd never met them. I never met anybody. I didn't even work with Ed for 6 weeks. Something crazy like that. I never saw a hide or hair of Ed for 6 weeks because John and I were just creating the game. We didn't have anything to program. So we didn't need Ed. I could do his management stuff. So, it was just John and I. So I didn't meet, I was just go to the studio, we made a studio, and I would just work and then I would just leave. So I never met anybody. And all of a sudden, everybody knows my name at the company. People are calling, seeing me and call. And then John was just like, they've been testing the game and they really love it. And they're like, who is this guy? And it's my friend Danny. And so all of a sudden people would recognize me coming in and that. Then they tested the game on Super Bowl Sunday. For first time testing. So John calls me up. He's like, I've been to the arcade 3 times to fix the game. I was like, what's wrong with the game? He's like, well, listen to this. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I go in there. There's hardly anybody in it in the arcade. And the guy called me up because there's something wrong with the game. And so I'm looking at the game and everything looks good. And then I look at the coin box. The game stops playing when the coin box is full because it can't take any more coins. He goes, so I empty it out and it's back to working and I leave. He's like, about 2-3 hours later, they call me again. Same thing. And then he goes, and now they call me again and that's why I'm calling you. He was just like, we got something.
That's an aha moment. Like, you don't hear of that happening. That's incredible. And to have to do it multiple times in the same day, that's just unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so then I knew it. And then, I got to be on the side of the game. John called me the night before. He's like, what are you going to do tomorrow? And I was like, it was a day off or something. We talk off and he knew it was my day off. He's like, I want to put you on the side of the game. I was like, what? And he's like, you're the only one who believed in me. You're the only one out of the whole company who thought this project was worth it. They said no to us at the beginning. Ed and the rest of the guys said no to it at the beginning. And now it's a success. And he's like, and to thank you, I want to put you on the side of the game. And then, so I was like, okay. He's like, come in, we're going to take your picture and put you on the side of all Mortal Kombat games. I was like, thanks. Yeah.
So we're speaking with Master Daniel Pesina, who you can meet November 17th at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention. So the original Mortal Kombat was huge. Now we know it's a huge success. So naturally, plans were made for a sequel. So for me personally, Mortal Kombat 2 had everything I loved about the first one. And then it had more, So how did you guys manage to top the first Mortal Kombat? And really what I think is just take it to another level.
Because of the ideas from the first game, we had really, really quick. Here's a really cool example. So we're shooting Sonya Blade, Liz Malecki, original Sonya. I know there's like 8 or 9 different Sonyas now. But we're talking about the original one, the one who created the crab thing. She created the crab move where you flip guys over. But John is like, we need a fatality. And I look at John and it's like, she has to give you the kiss of death. And John is like, she can't kiss anybody. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, what? He goes, we'll never get away with it. She cannot kiss anybody. And I'm like, John, I popped somebody's head off, came to pour somebody's heart out. Carlos electrocuted you. I blew up somebody in flame. I froze somebody, but she can't kiss anybody. And then he started laughing. He goes, we can murder everyone, but we can't have sex or a kiss in the game. And then I was just like, okay, how about if she kisses her hand, blows it, it looks like a butterfly, hits the guy and blows up in flames. And John is like, we can do that. But then Liz was like, why do I have to do a fatality? Why can't I just give them a flower and everybody live in peace and be friends? We should all just be friends. And we started laughing, but that was the idea for the friendship, which we did in number 2. Yeah.
And it's amazing to hear the insight, because I know that's one of the biggest things. How did they come up with this stuff? What was the motivation? So it's like these cool little situations where you almost couldn't have, it was the situation itself that forced you to be creative and come up with some of this stuff, which is just legendary now. You know?
Yeah. Or even holding up or holding up, I'm holding up a scorpion doll. Originally, that was John and I and Carlos were goofing around, and we shot a commercial where Scorpion was like promoting a pizza. So I was eating pizza and I did this video, and then John was like, "Oh, that's cool. Hold up something else. We're going to put a doll in it and do this friendship that way." So that it just came up just goofing around,
You go.
Yeah.
Wow. So getting on to the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention, where fans can meet you on November 17th. It's the first time our audience will have a chance to meet yourself and Anthony Marquez in person, who played Kung Lao on November 17th. So fans will also have the chance to get a picture with the two of you. Is that right?
Yeah. We'd be happy to take them. And when you come there, just approach the table. Remember, we're all friends. It's really cool to work with like Tony, because I just talked to him yesterday. I speak to everybody from MK1 probably at least once a week. Still, we're still friends after all this.
You were friends before. Why wouldn't you still be friends today? Right?
Yeah. Some of the MK2 guys, I'm in contact more than others, just because their schedulers, things like that. So when you come, it's the camaraderie. It's the energy interaction. It's not like we love each other. We're brothers. And so when you come, you're part of the family, and that's the experience. I think, that's one thing we have over, nothing against other people. You go to that it's different, like Power Rangers, they met on set, or other wrestlers met. If you meet wrestlers, they all met in the ring. We actually knew each other since childhood. So it's just, and we're geeks. We want to see what you bought. We're like, oh, I got that. Oh, what's your favorite comic? Oh, I got that one. Oh, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, both of us are just like that. Oh, I remember when I collected that,
So it really is the Mortal Kombat family. And, we mentioned it a little earlier. I really think for me, maybe we didn't know it at the time, but there was just something special about Mortal Kombat, something that felt very different, something that felt very real about it. And I think that's a lot of what it was, is that you guys really were more than just friends. You're essentially a family that got together and made this amazing fighting game.
Yeah, and it's an experience. When you get there, you're going to be like, holy cow. It's like, so, and there's stories for everything. Tony has stories about making 2 and 3, just insight that people don't really get to hear that much, I guess. Right. Why this is this? Why is this? Hey, why did you guys do this? Or, hey, why did you do that? Well, this is what we did, because we had to overcome something, or just goofing around. We came with ideas, nobody very little people know that Kung Lao we called him Odd Job, from 007.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't call him Tony, and we wouldn't call him Kung Lao. We called him Odd Job. So, hey, come in, shoot Odd Job. Okay. So, there's a lot of little things.
Little inside,
little insides that they're kind of fun to know.
So fans will be able to meet you guys. They'll also be able to get personalized autographs. So here's the big question. Will the two of you appearing in costume? And more importantly, are you going to bring out the famous Johnny Cage sunglasses?
We will not be appearing in costume. Like the Scorpion costume, they threw in the garbage. So they didn't see value in it, so they threw it out. And some I'm not going to say who from Midway dug it out of the garbage, and took it home and then gave it to his brother, and his brother gave it to somebody else. I had the Scorpion mask. Some museum has that. Same. I gave a fan the belt we used for Raiden and Sonya. That was my property. I gave it to some fan because for me it's for me it's just a stash. For them it's a memorabilia.
Yeah.
Rich used to have his Kano stuff. He picked it out. A lot of people don't know that the costumes were mainly picked out by the personalities with John and myself and Rich would go pick out Kano's costume, or for Raiden, it was Carlos and John. For Sonya, it was me, John, and Liz. So we, most of the Johnny Cage costume, I think I have the shoes only. Shoes and sash. I have the shoes and sash still. So the costumes we're not in. Tony will bring his hat. I'll bring my sunglasses.
Accessories.
Yeah, I'll bring a rope dart, which is the original weapon of Scorpion. Scorpion originally were brothers with Sub-Zero. That I'll tell that story there. That's all. That story is based on my brother and I. So that's why Scorpion and Sub-Zero were brothers, and that's a funny joke, jokey thing that between Carlos, myself, and John. How the original idea, and then they changed it. So I'll bring the rope dart, which is actually a weapon used to pull horsemen off their horses. So it's like an anti-cavalry weapon. Besides, being in close, you still have to be far away because of the battle horse.
Right.
So when I put that in the game, I used to compete with that weapon. So I'll bring along that, and people can see. I'll do some moves or something like that so people can see that. There's going to be.
If you had to pick one special move that was probably everyone's favorite, it's got to be get over here, like.
Yeah, Rich DeVizio came up with that. Rich, when I was trying to explain to him what a rope dart was while I was working. And so, John was like, yeah, we could do that, but Ed couldn't understand the concept. Right. And he was like, what? Finally, Rich pulls out a rope dart from my bag, and he throws it out, and he pulls it back and says, get over here. So when you hear that, that's actually Kano inspired. That's Kano's voice that's actually saying, get over here. It's not really Scorpion's voice. Later, Scorpion says it now, but really that was Kano doing that move. So, yeah. So Rich coined it or created that phrase.
Wow, probably maybe one of the most famous phrases in the history of video games at this point. So if fans want to connect with you on social, where can they find you?
They could find me on Instagram, Master D Pesina, Facebook as Master Pesina. You can email me, Master Pesina is my school's email. So.
All right. Well, meet Master Daniel Pesina and Anthony Marquez Sunday, November 17th at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention held at the Army-Navy Club in Manchester, Connecticut. Photo tickets are limited, so reserve yours today before they sell out. Master Pesina, thank you for joining us on the podcast. We look forward to seeing you on November 17th at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention. We just can't wait. And, thank you for joining us today. It's just been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone for tuning in.
All right. That'll do it for episode 1. We'll see you all at the Manchester Comic and Toy Convention on Sunday, November 17th at the Army-Navy Club in Manchester.